Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. Technically classic. In a cosmic sort of way, technically not. It's classic in that nothing came of this. But, in a sense, this was the reboot. But, last time around we finished all of the televised, episodic, original run, classic Doctor Who with Survival. What was that one about?
Remind me.
The Doctor and Ace went to Perryvale. Kids were disappearing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They were taken by cat people and
Cheetah people.
Cheetah people, who were working for the Master. The Master was turning part cat, and he wanted to find a way home. And then once he got back to Earth, he decided, well, as long as I'm a cat, I might as well kill the Doctor. And where last we saw, the Doctor left him on a dying, exploding planet. So, and that was pretty much it.
And I read somewhere that the last 2 or 3 episodes, they never showed the interior of the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Well, now, one of the things I remember about the movie was this really kind of elegant Victorian interior.
Yeah, it's very, very different in the movie. So, but yeah, I also heard that I think technically some of the stories are out of order in the last season. So technically, like, Curse of Fenric is supposed to come first, which gives you the tie-in to Ace, and then you go into Ghostlight, which gives you the rest of Ace's backstory. But I don't know. I'd never really heard anyone saying that we should watch it in a particular order or anything. We just watched it in the order it was on Amazon. Yeah. So, but I don't think anyone really minded that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that would have helped or not, because Ace's backstory, like, is honestly kind of the... I don't want to say, like, a low point, like it's a bad thing or anything, but it was the... I would say kind of least interesting thing about those episodes. Like, the plots of those episodes were more interesting, but either way. But yeah. But, let's see. So that was 1989. It's now 1996. And Doctor Who is trying to come back. And they're trying to sell it in both Britain and in America. Which it did well in one. It did not do so well in the other one. But this is the movie, the only kind of appearance of Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor.
Until Night of the Doctor.
Yeah, which is
5 minutes long.
Yeah, but still, at the time, for a long time, this was his only appearance.
Yeah.
Luckily, he did come back and do audio dramas, which, honestly, like, that's such an amazing thing, because I almost feel like, you know, if you get cast in this thing and you're promised, hey, this is going to be a big show, and it gets canceled almost immediately, I'm kind of amazed he even cared to come back and do the audio dramas. But at the very least, it made him, at least with those audio dramas, it made sure that he was canon.
Yeah.
You know, like, he is important to... and I guess probably part of that was, you know, they started doing all the comics and stuff with the 8th Doctor, so it pretty much did canonize him. So I'm glad, because I remember I was watching this video about Doctor Who, and they played this clip from some show. I don't know what it was, but it was like before the new series had started in 2005. And one of the characters was able to just list off every actor that played the Doctor, and the other person was like, oh, what about Paul McGann? And they both said, well, Paul McGann doesn't count. And it's like, oh, I don't know, like, what the reception was. You think we would have learned this since the last time we watched this movie, but I'm not entirely sure what the reception was to the movie, at least in the UK, or like how canon was the 8th Doctor, you know? Because I know we also had Scream of the Shalka, which was years later, and that presents an alternative 9th Doctor, but they never really say in the episode whether or not that Doctor, like, regenerated from Paul McGann. So I don't know. I don't know how, like, I mean, I know that we're in this, what the fandom calls the wilderness years, where they were left alone to survive on their own, basically, without a TV show. But yeah, I don't know how, like how difficult it was to have the Eighth Doctor being a part of canon. So, I mean, again, like, he did get the audio dramas, he got books, he got comics, pretty much immediately, even after the new series was canceled. So, but I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment, basically. Like, you know, what was perception of the Eighth Doctor like in the fandom? You guys can tell us in the comments. That's what you're here for. So, but otherwise, we are rewatching the movie. We've seen this once before. And overall, I think we enjoyed it the first time around. Yeah. So I'm expecting to enjoy it the second time around. You know, we talk about like, oh, well, now we have the context going into a rewatch. The context is we've watched 26 seasons of a television show, so hopefully we understand everything that's happening here. Yeah. So,
now, one of the controversies about this was that during the course of the film, he mentioned something not about having the two hearts, but about the fact that his mother was from Earth. Does he not say that?
Yeah, he'll have a line like that. And because I think it's something like he says that, but you could almost pass it off as like, wow, the doctor lies about stuff. He's just saying stuff. But I think it is reinforced later in the movie too that he is like half human or something. And it's a thing that I don't think is ever brought up again. And I think Doctor Who just tries to ignore that the best they can. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if, like, at this time, like, how many theories there were about who the Doctor really is, you know?
Yeah.
None of which were canon. They were just sort of loose. Which, I mean, even, like, the last 2 seasons we've had sort of play with, you know, who is the Doctor, really? And they don't really... I don't know how much of that... I guess that's another thing, is how much of that was played around with the fandom, you know? Because I know that'll also go into, like, you know, what were the other faces in the brain of Morbius? Were those the Doctor's faces, or were those Morbius's faces, you know? And then they try to give an answer in... What year is it? 2019? I don't know. It was some year. They vaguely give an answer, and nobody liked it. Or either you liked it, or you just didn't. I don't know. I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think, though, largely it's ignored, as are most things in this movie, apart from the Eighth Doctor himself. He's one of the few things from this movie that gets to come back. And I know that Eric Roberts, who, spoiler alert, even though we've already watched the movie before, but Eric Roberts, who plays the Master in this, he has come back for audio dramas where, like, they bring all the Masters together. And I think that's really cool, because even more than Paul McGann, that he came back and was accepted as an incarnation of the Master. So, it is a little strange to go straight into another story with the Master, though, after we just watched Survival. But yeah, you got anything else?
Well, I got to thinking this morning. There's, you know, always been one of the questions, and we've asked it, you know, why is the Doctor so fond of Earth? Then I got to thinking about, because we had gone through all the companions last time, and I thought there was one of the episodes where essentially he had to allow some explosion to happen, which literally created all the DNA that created all the creatures on Earth. And he was there when Adric accidentally crashed into the planet and killed off the dinosaurs, and he was there with the Silurians. It's like he's literally been somewhere, you know, in the history of Earth, so that by the time of 1963 rolls around, he said, you know, if I'm trying to hide out, perhaps this is the place that I should go.
Yeah, but, like, even unknowingly, it's like, you know, why does the Doctor have this attachment to Earth? Is because in his own future he will play such a pivotal role in it. Yeah. They do kind of play with that later, with, like, you know, why did the Doctor go out into the stars? And it basically kind of boils down to, he wanted to see how does the universe keep going? And the answer they basically come to is, the universe keeps going because you're there to keep it going. And he didn't even realize it. So he's basically like chasing himself throughout the universe. So, yeah, I could see that as a sort of, like, because, with the whole thing of, like, time and everything in this show, it's like, it would kind of work that it's like, because of how many interactions he has in the future with Earth, that informed his decision. Or maybe even the TARDIS is what, decided to take him there. So, yeah.
And we do get to see more of the interior of the TARDIS in this movie.
Yes. The new interior of the TARDIS, along with new companions, new action, and the United States. So, I guess that's pretty much it.
That sounds good to me.
We're not going to have any breaks ever again. No more breaks during episodes. So we might as well just jump right into Doctor Who, the movie, again. Here we go.
It was on the planet Skaro that my old enemy, the Master, was finally put on trial.
I already have questions.
As his list of evil crimes was read, and sentence passed. Then he made his last, and I thought somewhat curious request. He demanded that I, the Doctor, a rival Time Lord, should take his remains back to our home planet, Gallifrey.
Why were the Daleks in charge of his trial? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, it is. I remember it being very jazzy for some reason.
The Time Lord has 13 lives, and the Master had used all of his. But rules never meant much to him.
And then some.
So, I stowed his remains safely for the voyage back, because even in death I couldn't trust him.
That makes sense. It's been so long since he's had the Sonic. I know this is such a different TARDIS interior. I love it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you could actually, like, live in it peacefully.
900-year diary.
Yeah. How the Master works, I will never understand. It's very weird how little the Seventh Doctor is talking. I've never heard him not talk. I mean, you could probably bust through the gate. You have a car. Good shot. He still has his hat. Oh.
Stop it. What? Here it comes. Hold it narrow, guy. Chang Li will help you.
Yeah, that's really nice of him. It's just... It's almost kind of jarring going from survival to this, just the difference in production.
Yeah. He had gunshot wounds?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna say, don't go to the opera if you're on call. Is there literally no other cardiologist in San Francisco?
Oh, I'm not sure.
It's okay, I got it.
Try not to speak, Smith. We've already taken out all the bullets, so now we're going to listen to your heart and try to find out why it's so wild, and then I'm going to fix it. You'll be fine. Okay.
I do kind of like that they can't just accept that he has two hearts.
I'm going to stop.
I have to say, it took me a long while to get under the anesthesia when they were operating on me. Not like that, but I was awake in the operating room.
Sir?
Yeah. Come on.
Could you just come with me, please?
It's good that he stayed there too. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
Gang wars aside.
You don't know this man at all, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Then tell me his real name.
I gotta go.
Wait!
This is not that good of a kid.
Somebody stop him!
Get the thing out of the way. He's a snake.
What was the name of the snake in Kinda?
The Mara.
The Mara.
It's December 31st, 1999. Party on!
I don't know that they're that cheerful in the morgue. I'm sure you got to keep some spirits up, but
Sweet dreams.
it's also an incredibly big room. Yeah. I give you something to breathe. Yeah, he stopped snoring after violently shaking. I'm sure he's fine. Oh no, someone's ironically watching Frankenstein.
The young morgue attendant there, I think, went on to do Mad TV, and he was a regular on Young Sheldon.
Oh, that's the craziest regeneration we've seen so far. I also like that because of both of their hairstyles, he honestly looks like a younger, if taller, Sylvester McCoy.
Hello?
How long do you have to stay? Are people in the morgue on call as well?
Well, I guess somebody has to be there for receiving, 10
Yes.
hours of the day and night.
I guess. Although it's not like they're going anywhere. Gee, what happened here?
Either under construction or had some kind of problem.
Maybe an earthquake. We just haven't fixed this part yet. That's poetic. They were both reborn. And now we're back from commercial, apparently.
What would you like me to call you then?
Master will do.
Well, come back to bed, Master.
I was gonna say, you're not ready for the things he's into.
This really was a double exposure. In either case, I can't afford to lose you.
What are you doing?
I should have done last night.
Am I having a bad dream here?
I lose a patient.
Don't worry,
and then
those
I lose
fire
his
alarms
body,
won't
and
go
I
off.
have justice. I've got to find his body.
And I have to keep this hospital open.
No. No. If you do this, I'll quit.
You don't mean that.
And see, that's the kind of guy that the Snake should have taken over.
Well, yeah. I was gonna say too, is like he's particularly like evil. He's just the manager or whatever. Yeah.
I'll be back.
Well, I got orders to move his body.
Yeah.
The Asian child.
The Asian child? First, you're sick.
Thank you.
Like half of it is the master, half of it is just kind of a robot, but it's interesting watching him work.
He's taking all his stuff. Brian.
Your boyfriend?
Ex-boyfriend. Listen, why don't you just have a seat and open your shirt? I want to listen to your heart.
What?
Man, Brian was so mad he worked through the night to get his stuff back.
He's taking the sofa.
And the sofa at 1 in the morning. Man. Nope.
I don't remember the key looking like that. I thought it was an ordinary key.
Well, yeah. It depends on who decides.
Who's there?
How'd he get in?
Not bad. But these belong to...
Brian? Yep. Keep him.
Thank you.
It's the one thing he forgot to take.
Taken most of my regenerations.
What do you do with them?
Unspeakable crimes.
Like what?
Genghis Khan?
What about him?
That was him.
No way.
Yes way.
Gold dust?
You get the rest when I get my body back. Deal?
Deal.
This is kind of turned into the Mummy
Let me show you.
and the Terminator. So is he implying that he was Genghis Khan? I feel like that's an episode we should have seen. He's got light, he's got bats.
If the TARDIS really likes you, the eye will open.
Why don't you look?
You pulled the staff from the stone.
I'm kind of amazed that the TARDIS likes anyone.
I know who I am.
Ah, how scandalous of the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
Good! Now do that again.
Let me in. We can sit down. We can have a cup of tea. We can talk about this reasonably.
Sure, Time Lord to Earthling.
That's right. I am a time lord.
Well, I thought you were a doctor.
So you're a doctor.
I am calling an ambulance to take you back to psychiatric, from which we've obviously escaped.
Chris, we don't have time for this. The Eye of Harmony is open. If I don't close it, get my TARDIS and the Master off this planet will no longer exist.
I'm calling the ambulance.
Grace, we have until midnight.
You've already accepted that he's taken a new body.
Now, didn't you say they'll see a clock getting started?
That's right. And, you know, it isn't just any old clock. It happens to be the most accurate atomic clock in the world. And it's right here at the Institute of Technological Advancement and Research in downtown San Francisco. Is it okay?
Thank goodness.
Atomic.
It's not often one has a Time Lord in one's living room, Doctor. He likes me to call him Doctor. You know, Freud had a name for that.
Transference.
That's very witty, Grace. At least Freud would have taken me seriously.
He'd have hung up his pipe if he'd met you.
Actually, we did meet.
Oh, that's right. He's a Time Lord.
We got on very well.
Did you know Madame Curie, too?
Intimately.
She kissed as good as me?
As well as you.
What? How did that happen? Did this truck explode into chickens?
What? He's British.
Jesus, where's I am? Jelly baby officer.
Jelly
baby.
Just take it.
Now, would Would you stand aside before I shoot myself?
Good job.
Thank you.
It's nice to have a companion with a weapon again. Why are they on the opposite sides of the roads?
Hey man, when I get all that gold, you know what I'm gonna do?
I don't want to know.
You kill me.
You want me to kill you?
No, I mean, you make me laugh, man. You're a funny guy.
I'm glad one of us is amused.
Hey, look, cheer up, man. You'll get your body back soon, and then we're a team, right?
Yes, we're a team.
The Master doesn't normally have his own companion. It's nice to see.
Dr. Grace Holloway and guest. There you are. Happy New Year. First time being on the board of this place has ever done me any good.
You must have found a back.
Why are you on the board of this place? You're a doctor.
And I probably made this observation before. The millennium did not end in 1999.
I'm half human. On my mother's side.
Yeah, I can see how that would be taken as a joke.
Yeah. It's the problem that that's integral to what's happening with the TARDIS.
Remember, answer the second question. Don't forget.
I won't. Now can I see what's in your hand, sir?
It's a weird thing that he, like, knows people's timelines. Ugh.
The Master?
He's gotten very gooey.
She is.
Police box?
Key.
Now, I always leave a spare key on the secret compartment above the door.
Great minds think alike. Here you go. It's in the cubbyhole above the P.
But
That's
why
convenient.
a police box?
Its cloaking device got stuck on a previous misadventure. I get this.
And there he goes again. Well, he's been traumatized. In we go.
Grace, this is a Type 40 TARDIS, able to take you to any planet in the universe and to any date in that planet's existence. Temporal physics.
Oh, you mean like interdimensional transference? That would explain the spatial displacement we experienced as we passed over the threshold.
But you're just saying words.
Grace, the neutron look, I'll show you.
Oh no. Why didn't he possess her earlier, honestly?
Wasn't in close enough proximity, I guess.
I guess.
I always dress for the occasion.
Oh, that
Well,
drip,
I'm glad
though.
to see that you are aware of the gravity of the situation.
But meanwhile...
Hey, baby.
You know, who holds a costume party at New Year's Eve?
In 3 minutes, the world will enter a new millennium. And with it,
It will enter a new millennium, he said.
how we measure time.
In a year and 3 minutes.
Too late.
You know, if anything, the Eye of Harmony is like the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That surgery was difficult.
I mean, just pulling a bunch of wires.
Humanium?
Meh.
Life force is dying, Master.
Well, good job. Oh. Kick him!
Is there simply too much action in this for the average Doctor Who fan?
It is pretty crazy.
You want dominion over the living, yet all you do is kill.
It was a Venusian Aikido. Or Jiu-Jitsu, whatever it was.
Yeah, just like the Ark. It's a miracle.
I have your things.
Hello, Grace. Well, how does it feel? It's all back death.
The catch is you have to go through it once. There you go. It's still an old machine. He's not amused.
Hey! Next Christmas, take a vacation. Just don't be here.
Right. Thanks. Thanks, Doctor.
In December of the year 2000, San Francisco exploded. Many people don't know that.
Right. Where to next? Where was I?
Before I was so rudely interrupted.
Oh no, not again.
Alrighty. And that is the movie.
Now, it's, in my opinion, really sad because I think if they had restarted the series here, he would have made a very good Doctor.
Yeah. That is the thing most people agree, even if they don't like the movie, is that Paul McGann should have had a series. So, I know there are people, even today, that still want them to do just a season with him. It's a little complicated, because you kind of don't want to run the risk of people being like, oh, well, let's keep this Doctor. Forget all the new Doctors. They're not the real Doctor. This is the real one. But at the same time, I do think it would be really good to have a season with him.
Yeah.
So, from what
make another movie with him.
Yeah, they could do something like a special or something at least. From what I understand, in terms of ratings, this was a success in the UK. But this completely flopped in the United States.
No, it was not on a major network, if I recall correctly. It was like on Fox or WB or something.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the problem. My recollection of the 90s, even though I was doing a lot of theater back then, is that if you weren't on NBC or ABC or CBS, those other channels, again, Fox, Paramount, it ultimately went through a whole bunch of consolidation, but they were not watched. You know, it was one of those things that I did not know. I'd never heard of a Doctor Who movie.
Yeah.
During that time period, so the people who did see it, again, probably didn't have a huge audience and therefore didn't have any effect. But again, I don't see why the BBC didn't resurrect it. Just say, okay, it didn't work for the United States, but let's do it again. Even if they didn't put it on BBC One or whatever,
Yeah.
Their primary channel was. They had like 3 or 4 channels at this point, didn't they?
I'm assuming it's because the BBC just didn't have the money for it, because it was co-produced with American money, that if you don't have the American money to back it, it just couldn't get off the ground, basically. And yet, I think probably the other problem is, it's a TV movie. Now, I will be honest that I cannot speak for, the climate of watching television in 1996. I wasn't born in 1996. So, I am relying on you and what you remember of the 90s, but how often were you watching made-for-TV movies in the 90s?
Well, that's the thing. They really kind of started in the 70s, and they were a thing. Steven Spielberg got his start with a wonderful little film called Duel. So, the movie of the week sort of thing, and the TV-produced movies, again, I think if this had been done by a major network, it would have had a better chance.
Yeah.
And how it got, and again, not sure which network they sold it to, or who co-produced it, but it seems to me that was a mistake. If they had tried to, and maybe they did try to persuade NBC or ABC, CBS, one of the big ones, to do it, and they turned it down. But I think the fact is, it didn't get a lot of publicity here in the United States, not that I remember. And again, we were right at the time where we were ending our own theater. I was still doing a couple of things at Jewel Box, but in 97, we took a 10-year break. So, again, the fact that I never knew that there was a TV movie says a lot about its promotion.
Yeah. Well, I almost wonder if maybe it would have done better if it was released in theaters, and then, because at the very least, like, it's not a, if you miss it when it airs, you're dead. Like, that's it, basically. Like, if it had been in theaters for 2 months, put out the advertising, put out the commercials for it, and then a couple months later you start advertising, hey, now we're going to do a show with this, a follow-up show, basically. That might have helped it.
That did. There were a lot of shows that were like that. They put out movies, and again, wasn't within months, but usually within a year or two, and sometimes recasting the leading roles.
Yeah.
But they were then turned into TV series.
Yeah. And I think maybe the other reason, too, is, at least for an American audience, like, if you don't know Doctor Who, and you try to watch this, is this a good jumping on point? And I think it's tricky. I think one of the things, too, watching it is, for the Americans that did watch this when it aired, is it takes a long time for it to kind of get going. Like, you have to go through the death of the 7th Doctor, who, if you didn't watch those seasons, you have no connection to this guy.
Yeah.
So you have to watch him die. Then you have to watch the 8th Doctor kind of going through his crisis. He meets Grace, and you start to get some of that. He remembers who he is. You start to learn some things. And I literally, because I was like watching the timer on the recorder over here, and it was about the 50 minutes mark. I'd say about maybe 45 minutes in the actual movie that it really started to get going. They went to the Institute to get the piece for the clock, and it's like that's when it the action started to pick up. Yeah. And at that point, I think it was I think it was still fine, but I think it may have just been that was too much buildup. Like, you kind of need to get in. The funny thing is going to be next week when we watch the 9th Doctor's first episode, because I feel like that entire discussion is going to be comparing it to this.
Yeah.
Because that's the pilot that worked, whereas this is the pilot that didn't work.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to say something about the contrast between the 70s and the 90s. I've lost the thread.
Yeah, but I think that's part of it, is how long it takes. So if you're American watching this and you don't know anything about Doctor Who, it takes so long to get to any sort of action.
Right, now I remember. And I've mentioned this many times before. I do know, at least here in Oklahoma, but I'm assuming it was nationwide because it was on PBS. It was on OETA, the Oklahoma Educational Television Authority here in Oklahoma. That I remember seeing several Tom Baker episodes on PBS. The problem was it was on Saturday night at like 10 o'clock or 10:30 because it was not part of the regularly scheduled programming of OETA or PBS. If PBS had aired this on a Friday night or any weekday night or just a regularly scheduled primetime thing, I think it could have caught on.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, most people still to this day think that of Classic Who, Tom Baker was probably the most well-known, if nothing else because he lasted so long. So I think if PBS or any other of the networks had picked it up back in the 70s and showed it in a primetime slot, this would have been a way to help regenerate it.
Yeah. I think actually, because the development of this movie was also kind of, a little funky, where I think that was one of the original ideas, was to sort of disregard the last three Doctors and just have Tom Baker as the Doctor originally, and then he regenerates into the new Doctor. And I'm glad they didn't go that route, for obvious reasons, but that does sound like such a very, corporate idea of like, well, he was the most popular one, we'll put him in here, and then he goes into the new Doctor. Sure, that can kind of work. It's the same mentality of like, every time a new Terminator movie comes out, you have to think, okay, so this one disregards the last one and Salvation and Terminator 3. Sometimes they disregard Terminator 2, and that's just weird, but you kind of have to go all over the place. So I'm glad they didn't do that here. And I know they were trying for bigger names than Paul McGann to play the Doctor. I think actually two of the names, at least on the American side, were Tom Hanks and Harrison Ford, neither of which would work as the Doctor. I don't know, I'm pretty sure Harrison Ford turned them down or whatever, but at least with Tom Hanks, I think he specifically said, like, no, I can't, an American should not be playing the Doctor. I did actually look and see that two of the other choices for the Doctor were, one is Christopher Eccleston and the other is Peter Capaldi, both of who would later go on to play the Doctor.
And we've mentioned before, Jonathan Pryce would have been an excellent Doctor.
Yeah.
Now, I just remembered something else too. 1989, if I recall correctly, was the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation. And I think that may have, again, partially eclipsed all of this, is because once the Star Trek franchise began taking off and we started to see things like Quantum Leap and all of these other sci-fi series, by 1996, when this came out, it was kind of oversaturated, and that may have also, again, worked against. Again, I like the movie. I wish I had seen it back then, but again, I think it got absolutely no publicity that I remember.
Yeah. So, and there is a difference, like, okay, Star Trek is a more serious sci-fi show, even though it obviously Star Trek has its ridiculous moments, but just straight away going into this, it's like, especially if you don't know Doctor Who, maybe the weirdest thing about all of this is the Master. You don't know who the Master is. You don't have the history between them that you have if you watch the classic stuff. But you just have this guy, and he's just the weirdest guy in the world. Now, to be fair, this portrayal of the Master is not too far off.
No, it really isn't.
I pictured some of these lines coming from Anthony Ainley, and I was like, no, that still tracks. It's weird, but he's weird, and he's goofy, and he's campy. Like, I could see at the end Anthony Ainley in this big ridiculous dress. He's just, I always dress for the occasion, Doctor. Like, I could see that. Yeah. But if you're not used to it, he's weird. he's so weird, and especially because it takes so long to get into who the Doctor is, because you have to watch the 7th Doctor die, then he's reborn as the 8th Doctor, which you already don't understand, and then you have to have him remembering everything. It's just everything just kind of worked against it. So, I don't know. See, it makes you wonder, like, if they had just started with the Doctor, the 8th Doctor, he's just here, would that have worked better? And the thing is, you'd have to change the plot completely for this episode. But would that have worked better if they had just not, or maybe show the regeneration from the 7th Doctor to the 8th Doctor, like, at the end of a first season, maybe, like the season finale, like maybe we get a story where it flashes back to something that the 7th Doctor was working on, and that's how you sort of get the handoff. I don't know. Other than that, I mean, for a first episode of a show that doesn't happen, I mean, it is good.
Yeah,
it's good. The production is really, really good, especially compared to a lot of the stuff we've watched over 26 seasons.
The two Doctor Who and the Dalek movies, now realize that's back in the early 60s where they didn't have the special effects and everything. But still, this is, I mean, production values and everything else, this is so much better than either of those.
Yeah. If you're a Doctor Who fan, because we talk about, the Master is pretty much exactly the same. He's kind of goofy, but the Master is kind of goofy anyway. The only thing that's like, that just doesn't work in the canon is the Doctor is half human. And that is canon. It's if it was just that he said that, just pass that off. But the fact that is so integral to how the TARDIS works makes no sense. So, that is sort of the only thing, like, in terms of continuity, where it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. But, well, and also, just at the beginning, where it's like, oh, the Master was tried for all of his crimes and executed by the Daleks. Now, who agreed to that? I don't know if the Daleks care who the Master is. B, why would the Time Lords allow the Master to be executed by the Daleks? That's one of those things where it's like, I feel like that was a corporate note or someone, just being like, what's the big popular villain? Well, we'll have the Master, because it would have been interesting if they had made this movie about the Daleks, but it's probably a good choice using the Master, but it's like, and throw in the Daleks somewhere. It's like, well, where? There's nowhere to put them in.
And the fact that they mentioned them but didn't show any representation of them.
Yeah.
Because that might have intrigued an audience to go, who's the little, pepper pot that's executing people?
Yeah, because otherwise, it's just like this voice that you hear, which is different from the voices, how the voice is in the show. So, like, yeah, that could have been kind of interesting, but
I wondered, though, because I was thinking that it would be Sylvester McCoy that was narrating, but it sounded more like Paul McGann that was narrating.
Yeah. It's basically like he's telling the story of how he regenerated. Yeah. I suppose you could say, like, I guess we don't know if this would have continued, if narration would have continued into the show. But you could even say, I guess this is like the entry in his 900-year diary.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could, that is also kind of weird that it's like, because if you don't know, like, if you're starting this, it's like, okay, so there's someone narrating, but then you see Sylvester McCoy, who has a very, very distinctive voice from Paul McGann, and you're like, so what's happening? And it might take you a minute to realize, oh, they're supposed to be the same character, but we'll get to that, basically. So
I thought it was interesting that Paul McGann seemed to be, because he seemed to have some characteristics, not just of Sylvester McCoy, but also a lot of Tom Baker and Peter Davison. I mean, of those, I saw little bits and pieces. I didn't see Colin Baker in there,
right?
And I didn't see Hartnell or Pertwee or Second Doctor
Troughton.
But he did seem to have And of course the throwbacks of looking at the scarf and the jelly babies and all that. But he did seem to be a combination of those three personalities.
Yeah. Yeah, because he doesn't get the very, like, hardline serious moment. Like, I mean, like, the closest is just him, you know, yelling to save himself, basically, when he's hooked up to the contraption. But other than that, it's like, yeah, he doesn't get that sort of serious moment that that the other doctors will get. So yeah. As for the other stuff, yeah, you know, it's also strange because it's like, if this is supposed to be like a pilot to a new series, it's strange then that, you know, episode 1, basically, the next episode, would have seen the Doctor going and getting a new companion.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't end with Grace and Lee going with the Doctor on his adventures. Like, all of this was to, you know, set up the Doctor again, but now you're going to have to do it all over again, basically, in a first episode.
Although, it seemed to me they might have been setting up that when the series started, he would come back and pick Lee up. Because he said, whatever you do, don't be here next year. So they come back and say, hey, listen, I've come back to rescue you. But yeah, obviously, to stay true to the original Doctor, he couldn't have a female companion that was a romantic relationship. I understand that's now changed. But Lee would have, you know, the street kid. I mean, he's certainly not Jamie McCrimmon, but that's the kind of, you know, we've said all along that the Doctor never seems to have, the mechanic that he talked to during, was it Deadly Assassin? Somebody who knew him from when he was back at the academy or the university or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just somebody who was not of the upper class, just, you know. And so, you know, Lee, who's, you know, obviously a street kid, don't know what he was up to there at the beginning that he was getting shot at. But just to have someone like that, I think that shows a better dynamic between the Doctor and his companion.
Yeah. It probably also doesn't help that it's like, you know, when you're trying to sell this show that, you know, it's a show about traveling in time and space. Okay, where are we going to go? San Francisco. Like, okay, I mean, San Francisco is lovely, but and to be fair, it is 3 years in the future of when they put this out, but even still, it's like we don't get to see these other times and locations, especially because we don't have the rest of the season. It almost seems like they should have released this and been like, hey, you know, in 2-3 weeks, season 1 begins. Like, it seems like they should have already had a season in the works. Like, they're entirely banking on this one movie being successful and then everyone coming back in a year for season 1.
Yeah.
All on a TV movie, not on a major network.
Yeah.
You know, not on a major network, not on HBO or anything. And it's just like, it does kind of seem, at least in hindsight, that this was almost, you know, designed to fail.
Yeah.
Apart from the actual movie itself. So, in terms of the other stuff in the movie, no,
I did notice something I didn't notice before. I knew that he got his outfit because it was the costume party.
Yeah.
But he took it out of a locker that also had a cowboy hat and a gun in a holster, and that was supposed to be the Wild Bill Hickok. Except that Wild Bill Hickok would have never worn anything as fancy as that. You know, Wild Bill Hickok was out in, you know, Montana and Wyoming, in that area, in the far northwest area. He was a cowboy. He would never have been dressed. Now, Bat Masterson, somebody like that, but the costume was great. I liked the fact that he was wearing something that made him stand out from everybody else, but that was not Wild Bill Hickok.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because at first, you know, because they do the whole, the scarf thing. At first, I thought when he got that jacket out that was more of like a Pertwee style jacket, and I thought, oh, okay, that's a good callback. And then I realized, oh, no, wait, that's the jacket he's going to wear.
Yeah.
But yeah, for that particular costume that the guy was supposed to have, it's like, this is a little odd, but yeah. I will say another thing that I think would have been a problem if they had gone on to have a season 1 is the Doctor knowing everybody's personal timeline. It's a little strange. A, he's never done that before. B, that just seems like that would be a problem in the future of like, well, shouldn't he know all the, like, now if it's a historical figure, sure. And I guess you could say like there was the security guard who, you know, he says like, oh, well, he saves the Earth from several, you know, natural disasters because he figures out, you know, he can predict when earthquakes will show up. It's like, okay, that seems like an important thing, but like Grace's personal timeline, Lee's personal timeline, all of that, it does seem a little odd, a little too convenient. He knows their entire history, whereas like, yeah, if you go and you meet like Marco Polo, it makes sense that he knows the history of Marco Polo, you know, or some of the others that he mentions, you know, he met Sigmund Freud, you know, so that kind of makes sense. But knowing everybody's personal history, I think that would have been a bit too much. But
well, what I was attributing that to was the fact that, you know, the Master has the hypnotic power that he's always had, and it was just simply that it's not that he already knew, but being in their presence, he could sense what their future was going to be. Now, that's the way I took it. So, but either way, yes, it's something he's never done before.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And I guess there's also the question of, you know, how many people can he do that on? Because it's very clear he can't do that with the Master. Otherwise, he would see everything coming. So maybe it is a thing of like, you know, it's specifically humans, and you're right. Maybe it's like, if he's in close proximity, he can kind of get a sense of it.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I will say, even though it might not have been a great idea to show the Seventh Doctor dying, I will say it's interesting how it happens, just from watching all the different ways the Doctor has had to regenerate over the years. And seeing that it's, you know, he probably would have just regenerated anyway, but because they were going in, because they were using the anesthetic, it almost, you know, completely destroyed him, basically. And it was, you know, luck, basically, that finally in the morgue he was able to regenerate. Yeah. So,
and also, you know, and I mean this, you know, in the least possible real world experience, but when they got him into the operating room, they said he had one in the shoulder, which I think they said was a through and through, and then two in the leg. So unless it severed a major artery, those are all survivable wounds. So it strikes me that he was trying to say, you don't need to do anything to me. I will survive this on my own. And it was the fact that they tried to operate on him is what ultimately killed him.
Well, if anything, it wasn't that they were operating on the wounds. I mean, they took the bullet out of him, but the reason all of that was happening was because they could not understand that he had two hearts. All the images showed two hearts. They thought it was just a mirroring. And so when they try to take his heartbeat, I like that idea that it's like, no, the machines will just register it as his heart is going crazy, but it's just, you know, both of his hearts pumping pretty much at the same time. So I guess that's the thing. It's not even that, you're right, it's not even that those gunshots would have killed him. It's that they specifically killed him and forced him to regenerate. I will say, after watching all of Doctor Who, I finally, like, this is the one thing I can say, I finally understand watching everything. Regeneration is very fragile. Like, they have it as this thing of like, oh, this great thing that the Time Lords can do that extend their lives and everything. It is the most fragile thing. Because every time it's like, oh, there is a great danger. If he you know, gets hit or something while he regenerates, or, you know, B, even after he regenerates, you have no idea what's coming after that. Yeah. It's like, it is like the most fragile thing about him. And it's interesting because it's really just a production excuse of, hey, our main actor, he's calling it, he's hanging up his hat, and we're bringing in a new person. But every time they have this built-in mechanism, and it is the most dangerous thing that the Doctor ever goes through, is his own regeneration.
Yeah.
And it is just kind of a funny thing. It's like, this is literally just so you can have a new actor.
Yeah.
But it becomes like the most dangerous set of stories, basically.
And I mentioned before, the Quantum Leap series essentially stole that. Because Dr. Beckett, who goes into the machine and then is scattered through time, in his own lifetime, he couldn't go anywhere until much later in the last seasons, where he was able to go outside of his own lifetime. But every time he made the jump, there's a period of 5 to 10 minutes in the episode where he literally uses the phrase, "My memory has been Swiss cheesed," and it takes him a while to remember who he really is, and then to figure out why he's in this specific body.
Yeah. So,
by the way, I do recommend Quantum Leap. It's the original. I watched a couple episodes of the new one. I didn't get into it as well.
So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Now, normally when we come to the end of a Doctor's era, we put up the thumbnails and everything, and we talk about it. Seems to be a bit of a moot point today, but I mean, I can just put up the thumbnail for 5 seconds and be like, so what did we think of this era? This 1 hour and 25-minute era.
He should have had more.
He should have had more. And I mean, because we've seen The Night of the Doctor, as short as that was, he was really good in it. And we did also listen to the chimes at midnight, and that was also really good. Like, of the audio dramas we listened to, I think that one was the best one. So, so there's definitely, it's like, we just really want more of him, But yeah, but other than that, here, 1 second. Let me just jump up real quick. Next time, okay, there we go. Next time, we're moving on. We're moving on to 2005, 9 years later, with the beginning of the modern era. Or as some people call it, the old modern era. But anyway.
It's the old new who.
Yeah, that's such a problem. It's such a problem now that it's classic Doctor Who, new Doctor Who, and some people are calling it, new Doctor Who, or Disney Doctor Who, or whatever. But I don't know. I'd still just count that all as it's new. It's exactly like around this time, the video game New Super Mario Brothers came out for the Nintendo DS, and that started a whole line of new Super Mario Brothers games. And it's a little weird to now go back and be like, yeah, I'm playing New Super Mario Brothers 17, 20 years later. It's like, maybe poorly named at the time, but anywho, I guess we could at least call this the widescreen era, so that'll be good, and we'll have subtitles as well on the DVDs, so I guess that's pretty much it. Anything else?
No, other than after this, I would like to see the cast list, because, again, some of the character actors in there look kind of familiar. I just wanted to see if I actually recognize them.
Yeah, so we'll look at that.
Okay.
But yeah, that is pretty much it. The actual end of classic Doctor Who, because we're not gonna redo like Scream of the Shulka or anything. We didn't really care for that on the first go around, so I don't think we need to do a second one. But next time we move on to series one. That's the other thing, is that where all of classic Doctor Who is seasons, now it's series. And that has been the most annoying thing ever. I might still just call it season anyway, but next time around, Series 1, Episode 1, Rose. With all of that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist with all of our classic Doctor Who reactions.
200 and something of them.
As well as a playlist with all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.